Rise of the Mexican cartels. The rise of Mexican cartels can be attributed to a combination of complex factors. Economic disparities, political instability, and the high demand for illegal drugs in the United States have all contributed to their growth. However, what many people don't realize is the complicity and corruption within the Mexican government that allow these cartels to thrive. Over the years, numerous high-ranking officials, including law enforcement officers and politicians, have been implicated in colluding with cartels, providing them with protection and turning a blind eye to their criminal activities. Additionally, the geographical location of Mexico plays a significant role in the cartels' rise to power. Its proximity to the United States, the largest consumer of illicit drugs, makes it a strategic location for drug trafficking. The cartels have taken advantage of this proximity by establishing sophisticated smuggling routes and networks. The immense wealth generated from drug trafficking has allowed them to expand their operations, increasing their control over territories and making them formidable and dangerous adversaries. Brutality and violence. Mexican cartels are infamous for their extreme brutality and acts of violence. While some media coverage has depicted their savage acts, the true extent of their atrocities is often shielded from the public eye. The cartels employ various methods to instill fear and maintain dominance, including torture, beheadings, and dismemberments. These acts are not limited to rival gang members but also target innocent civilians, journalists, and even law enforcement officials who attempt to disrupt their operations. The brutality of Mexican cartels extends beyond physical violence. They engage in psychological warfare, spreading fear and intimidation throughout the communities they control. Families are torn apart, with members being kidnapped or forced into drug trafficking and other criminal activities. This cycle of violence perpetuates a culture of fear, making it challenging for communities to resist the influence and control of the cartels. The level of terror inflicted by those criminal organizations is truly horrifying and leaves long-lasting scars on the Mexican society. Drug trafficking lies at the core of Mexican cartels' operations. While their activities are primarily focused on supplying illegal drugs to the US, their influence has expanded globally. Cartels smuggle drugs, including cocaine, heroin, and methamphetamine, using sophisticated networks that span across borders. The vast profits generated from drug trafficking enable them to sustain their operations and corrupt key institutions at both the national and international levels. It's essential to understand the international connections of Mexican cartels. These criminal organizations collaborate with other international criminal networks, including transnational gangs and cartels from Central and South America. The alliances forged by Mexican cartels facilitate the trafficking of drugs, weapons, and human beings across continents. Additionally, the cartels' money laundering operations extend beyond Mexico, involving banks and businesses worldwide. The global reach of these criminal enterprises makes them a significant threat not only to Mexico, but also to international security. Mexican cartels are not only involved in drug trafficking, but also engage in heinous crimes like human trafficking. They exploit vulnerable individuals, especially women and children, for various purposes, such as sex trafficking and forced labor. Many victims are kidnapped or coerced into these situations, and their lives are forever altered. The cartels operate an extensive network that spans across Mexico and beyond, contributing to the global epidemic of human trafficking. The horrors endured by these victims are unimaginable, as they are subjected to physical and emotional abuse, forced into prostitution, and stripped of their basic human rights. The clandestine nature of human trafficking makes it challenging to uncover the full extent of the cartels' involvement, but their role in this despicable trade cannot be ignored. It's essential to recognize the interconnectedness between drug trafficking and human trafficking within the operations of Mexican cartels. The vast profits generated from the drug trade are often reinvested into expanding their criminal enterprises, including human trafficking networks. The demand for drugs and the demand for victims go hand in hand, often fueling this cycle of exploitation and perpetuating the cartels' reign of terror. The collaboration between cartels and organized criminal groups involved in human trafficking demonstrates the depth of the criminal reach and the devastating impact on countless lives. Corruption is a significant enabler of Mexican cartels' operations, allowing them to continue their criminal activities with relative impunity. The deep-rooted corruption within law enforcement agencies, the judiciary, and various levels of government creates an environment where cartels can operate with minimal consequences. The influence and intimidation tactics employed by the cartels, coupled with bribery and coercion, make it incredibly difficult to dismantle their criminal networks. The systemic corruption not only undermines the rule of law but also erodes public trust in institutions meant to protect society. The horrifying secret lies in the extent to which corruption reaches within Mexican society. It goes beyond individual police officers or politicians on the payroll of cartels. Corruption seeps into the fabric of communities where people are forced into silence out of fear or the lure of financial gain. The systemic nature of corruption poses significant challenges to tackling the cartel problem effectively. Breaking the cycle of corruption and impunity requires comprehensive reforms, strong institutional safeguards, and a commitment to accountability from the highest levels of government. The impact on Mexican cartels and Mexican society cannot be overstated. Beyond the violence and criminal activities, these cartels have instilled a culture of fear and insecurity among many communities. People live in constant terror, afraid to speak out or report crimes due to the reprisals from cartels. The cartels' grip on local economies further exacerbates poverty and inequality, leaving communities vulnerable to their influence. The profound social and psychological scars left by the cartels in Mexican society are a haunting reminder of their destructive power. Moreover, the cartels' influence extends beyond direct violence and crime. They also act as de facto authorities in some areas, providing essential services that the government fails to deliver. This twisted relationship blurs the line between criminality and governance, creating a distorted power dynamic. The cartels exploit the situation, further consolidating their control and presenting themselves as protectors or providers to the very communities they exploit. Understanding the complex dynamics of this relationship is crucial to finding effective solutions to combat the cartel's influence and restore stability to affected regions. One horrifying secret about Mexican cartels is the extent of their collusion with authorities at various levels. The reach of their corruption goes far beyond individual officers or low-ranking officials. High-ranking politicians, police chiefs, and even military personnel have been implicated in collaborating with cartels. This collusion not only allows cartels to continue their criminal activities but also undermines trust in the very institutions meant to uphold the law. Addressing this issue requires a thorough investigation, prosecution of those involved, and comprehensive reforms to weed out corruption from within the system. The collusion between cartels and authorities creates a climate of impunity where justice is often elusive. Cartel members frequently escape arrest or face minimal consequences for their actions. This lack of accountability perpetuates a cycle of violence and sends a chilling message that the cartels are above the law. Rebuilding trust in law enforcement and the justice system is essential to dismantling the cartels' power structures and restoring faith in the institutions tasked with protecting the Mexican people. Mexican cartels have evolved from being solely focused on drug trafficking to expanding their criminal enterprises into various illicit activities. They are now involved in extortion, kidnapping for ransom, arms smuggling, and even diversifying into legitimate businesses to launder their illicit proceeds. This diversification allows them to maintain their power and wealth while operating in different spheres. The sophistication and adaptability of the cartels pose significant challenges to law enforcement agencies and require comprehensive strategies to disrupt their operations effectively. One horrifying secret is a level of control cartels exert over specific industries, such as avocado production, mining, and oil theft. These profits from these illicit activities not only fund their criminal operations but also undermine the legitimate economy and deprive communities of essential resources. Additionally, the cartels' involvement in these industries creates a cycle of violence and exploitation as they extort money from businesses and terrorize those who refuse to comply. The depth of their influence highlights the need for comprehensive measures to dismantle the networks and restore the rule of law. Mexican cartels play a significant role in migrant smuggling, exploiting vulnerable individuals seeking a better life. They offer smuggling services to those seeking to cross the border illegally, often subjecting them to dangerous conditions and demanding exorbitant fees. The cartels' control over smuggling routes and their ruthless methods put migrants at risk of violence, extortion, and even death. The horrifying truth is that the cartel's involvement in migrant smuggling contributes to a humanitarian crisis, with countless lives being endangered and families torn apart. The exploitation and abuse suffered by migrants at the hands of the cartels is a tragic consequence of their criminal activities. Furthermore, the cartel's control over migrant smuggling routes also intersects with human trafficking. In some cases, migrants become victims of forced labor or sex trafficking, falling prey to the cartels' web of exploitation. The cartels capitalize on the desperation and vulnerability of migrants, perpetuating a cycle of suffering and victimization. Understanding the inter-between migrant smuggling and human trafficking within the operations of Mexican cartels is essential in addressing these heinous crimes and protecting vulnerable individuals seeking a better life. Another horrifying secret about Mexican cartels is the significant environmental destruction caused by their activities. Cartels engage in illegal logging, poaching, and illicit mining, wreaking havoc on Mexico's rich biodiversity and natural resources. The destruction of forests and protected areas not only threatens endangered species, but also disrupts fragile ecosystems. Moreover, the cartels' involvement in illegal mining contributes to water pollution and deforestation, further exacerbating the environmental impact. The long-term consequences of this environmental destruction are devastating and require concerted efforts to combat. The environmental impact of Mexican cartels extends beyond the destruction of natural resources. They also utilize toxic chemicals in drug production such as methamphetamine, which leads to contamination of land and water resources. These chemicals not only pose risks to human health, but also have far-reaching ecological consequences. The disregard for environmental regulations and the unchecked exploitation of natural resources demonstrate the cartels' utter disregard for the well-being of both people and the environment. The horrifying secrets about Mexican cartels reveal the depth of their brutality, corruption, and impact on society. From their collusion with authorities to the expansion of their criminal enterprises, their involvement in migrant smuggling and human trafficking, and the devastating environmental destruction caused by their activities, the cartels' reach is far-reaching and destructive. Understanding these hidden truths is crucial in formulating effective strategies to combat the cartels and bring justice to the affected communities. It's imperative that we shine a light on these horrifying secrets and work towards a safer and a more just society for all.